Good evening, everybody. Good evening and welcome. Welcome to what is our third in our series of speaker series, brought to you here from Bankwest Stadium in Parramatta. It's my absolute pleasure to have you all here tonight, both in the room and on our live streams. My name is Charlie Hands. I am the head of our partnerships and education pathways here at Torrens University. Now, before we start, I would like to pay our respects to the First Nations elders, both past and present. In particular, we acknowledge the Darug people, who are the traditional custodians of the land where we find ourselves tonight. Slight bit of housekeeping. We would love everybody who is on the live streams to be connected with us tonight. So if you have any questions or any feedback or any comments, we would love you to send them through to us. So we have an email address. If you can send any questions through to feedback@laureate.edu.au, we will try and get through as many of them as we can during the evening. If I could just give a little bit of a background as to why we're here and how Torrens has fit into a speaker series. Essentially, Torrens, we're super excited to kind of announce that we are the fastest growing university in Australia. We got our accreditation in 2015, and over the last 5 years, we are more than happy to announce we have had 20,000 students through the doors at Torrens University, and a huge part of what we do through our courses, which range from diplomas right through to doctorates, is our connection to industry. It's a huge part of our course. Our idea is to have graduates come out of our courses with industry experience, industry connections, and it's why we find ourselves here tonight, so we can have some face-to-face interaction with our industry. Now, tonight we'll hear from a group of sporting stars who've reached the pinnacle of their careers. They have blazed the trail for those that come after them. And you will also hear from our graduates, our current students, and our partners to really get a sense of who Torrens are and why studying sport and the wider sort of business community, you get a feel of why we're the number one for sports here at Torrens University. Now, obviously, you've not come to hear to me tonight. I'm going to hand you over to our MC for the evening. We all know and love him, one of our Torrens ambassadors, Mr. Tim Gilbert.
Thank you, Charlie. And you can tell there's about 2 decades between Charlie and I, because I need glasses and we're going to need them throughout the course of the night. Look, it's great to be here, and look, it is wonderful, and it's very easy. And I'm very honest and transparent when I say I love being a part of Torrens University. I studied many, many years ago, well over 3 decades ago, and nothing against the institution that I went to, but it was a different world. It was a different course. And we'll see through the course of the evening tonight just how Torrens is different. And the people that we speak to tonight, including some of the superstars of Australian sport, will just give us a little bit of an insight into the way that Torrens threads the education into the vocation. And look, I love it. We've got a great night ahead. So let's get started. And I do want to introduce my co-host this evening, Claudia Stanger. Claudia, come up with me, please. Take a seat. Now, Claudia, you graduated with a Bachelor of Business in Sports Management through Torrens. Tell us about your experience.
Yes, so I found Torrens because my brother was studying there and he studied tourism, ended up going overseas and loving his job, but a big thing that drew him to Torrens was the industry partners and the relationships you have in the industry. So once he graduated, he was able to find a job quite easily. Myself, I kind of studied events first, got a job in it, didn't really like it, and then my true love was sports management. And what I really liked was my true passion is skateboarding, and the school really helped me push to start my own business and allowed me to do assignments that were based around that. So they didn't kind of deter me from my passion, which was skateboarding.
Well, tell us a little bit about that initiative, because it's a cracker. I love it.
So When I was younger, I'm 27, so I started when I was 12.
Still very, very young.
Thank you. Yeah, so still young, still got a lot of years ahead of me, but I was the only girl at the skate park. So I was always had guys to skate with, and I'm now seeing that it's going to the Olympics, it's getting a lot more recognition. So I was like, what can I do? I can help push more girls into skateboarding and help them grow and build a community. So I now run a female-focused skate school.
How's it going?
It's going very well, very well. We survived COVID, so that's pretty good.
It flipped the world on its head, didn't it?
It did.
Interesting time to start a business.
Yeah, you could say that again.
You've got through. You've got through and you're continuing to thrive. Thanks a lot for being here tonight. We're going to hear more from you throughout the course of the evening. We as we heard from Charlie, if you're at home, make sure you ask a question and we'll obviously take some questions from the floor. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tim.
All righty. Big round of applause. Now, joining me to get a unique perspective as a player, broadcaster, sports administrator, of course, lots of people at Torrens University will know this individual well because he now works as a part of Torrens University. But life for Craig Foster began in northern New South Wales. Can we get a round of applause for former Socceroo Craig Foster? Just pop here for the moment, then I'll send you down the end to the, what would you call that, out on the wing? We're both on the wing. One of us could probably do it, the other couldn't. Now, does that seem a long time ago? Was it Grafton or Lismore? Lismore. 2MO?
Yeah, 2NTR, 2LM. It's a wonderful place. But yeah, I left when I was 15, almost 16 years old. Go down there, Australian Institute of Sport. So that's a long time.
Yeah, okay.
Since I've been there.
We won't go back to the blue light discos of Grafton or Lismore.
Yeah.
But what about your time at Torrens? You and I have known each other for a long time, we've worked, socialised, but we both came here at a very similar time. Tell us about it.
Well, Torrens got in touch kind of last year sometime and started to talk about this concept with me of sport and social responsibility. And we aligned very quickly in our thinking. And the former owner actually is a new owner for Torrens recently called Strategic Education, which is a listed organisation in the US. The one before that was Laureate. And their call to arms was here for good. And I thought, that's really interesting. You know, if you guys live up to that, that's a wonderful mission. And I started to get involved with the university and realised that not just the amount of assistance and support that they give the students, firstly. Secondly, it's about employability and industry capability. That means, there's so many of these opportunities where the students actually meet the very best in their field, which I think is incredibly valuable. And of course, that brings to bear a whole network of influence and context, which, as you know, and mentoring is really important.
Massive.
And thirdly, it's about the whole university is focused on providing education and tools to students for them to go and change the world for the better. And I just think that's extraordinary. So it doesn't matter if they're in the business field, they're expected to go out and do something wonderful. The organisation takes a global outlook, which also resonates with me, coming out of the game of football. And of course we have the great Real Madrid as one of the partner organisations, which is pretty extraordinary.
We're going to cross there a little bit later on tonight.
Yeah.
And look, just quickly, and we're going to get our first three guests up in just a tick. Sport, look, you don't do it because you get money, but it has become big business, hasn't it? Massive.
Yeah, it's huge business. I think it's about the industry of sport globally is about 1% of the global economy. So it's immense. But what we're really focused on, and particularly I am by developing some new courses for Torrens around social responsibility, is the question of how does sport contribute to making your local community, to making your state, to making our country, to making the world a better place. And I believe that it can. More than that, I believe that it should and it must. So some great examples of that. Later we're going to hear from the great man Adam Goodes, who you all know, of course, is an incredible Australian. And there's so many athletes here and around the world who are raising their voice for really important social issues. One that's really close to my heart, we're running some campaigns on at the moment, is around refugees and asylum seekers. And what's really interesting is so much of sport is reluctant to raise its voice for a group of people who have just, the same rights as us, the rights to be treated, well, like a human being. And I find that really confronting. And the question I ask is, why would sport be in a position where we're not prepared to immediately be vocal, to protect people's rights and to stand up for people who need it? And Adam Goodes did it. Peter Norman did it. You've got LeBron James and
Norman,
everyone.
Of course, 1968 Mexico Olympic Games, that's what you're referring to?
That's right, yeah, with the Black Power salute.
Absolutely.
And so there's some famous moments. Lionel Rose during apartheid, the famous, Aboriginal Australian world champion boxer, refused to go box in South Africa, right? So he made his own stand. But too often sport itself, institutional sport, in part because what you're saying, it's a massive business now, and so, sponsorship brings a whole heap of pressures, is reluctant to do so. So my mission really is to help Torrens develop students who are going to inherit that responsibility. So if you're going to be a future leader of AFL, you're going to lead rugby union, like the great David Pocock, has demonstrated, his commitment to environmentalism and so on. If you're going to go and lead one of these sports in future, even work in a professional club or at that level, you need to be comfortable, firstly, with dealing with athletes who are now raising their voice and saying, we're not going to be quiet. And secondly, we'd love to see you actually really take it forward and benefit society in a more substantive way. So that's what we're going to really committed to developing.
And there's a pretty obvious, very decent synergy, isn't there, between sport and what you're talking about there, aspiration. There's such a lovely link. Look, I'll let you go back out to the wing because we'll invite our first guest up, and I know this man very, very well. We're about the same vintage, but he is the king of Newcastle, ladies and gentlemen. If you ever ask anyone about a Novocastrian human being, he's a guy that played obviously so much for both Newcastle, New South Wales and Australia. He was the force on Channel 9, the face of NIB, one of the great blokes, Paul Chief Harrigan. Oh, how are you, Chief?
Never better. Yeah, no, wonderful. Great to be here. And well said, mate. This is very exciting.
And you travelled down the freeway?
Yeah, I've done that many times. A good run now. I went through the North Connects for the first time.
Only cost you $60.
Yeah, I've got money in the ashtray, but okay.
All right, mate, stay there. We're going to get into a few questions. Our next guest, one of the biggest names in world netball, captain of the Australian Diamonds, one of the elite group to make more than 100 appearances for the national team, as well as gold medals in World Championships, Commonwealth Games. I could go on and on. Caitlin Bassett, thank you so much for being here.
Sit next to me.
The next guy was known as the Pup because he came in so young. I remember doing the first story on his cricket career. He went on to be one of the most famous Australian cricketers, one of our best batsmen, one of our best captains, and he's a worldwide cricketing icon, Mr. Michael Clarke, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thanks, Timmy.
If I could start with you, Chief, because I still remember sitting on the steps of New South Wales Rugby League and News Limited in that mid to late 90s period where the game of rugby league was tipped on its head, and it was the Super League war. And one of the most iconic moments that happened during that period was when you gathered all your Newcastle Knights guys, put them on a minibus pre-days of the tunnel and drove to Sydney. What do you remember of that period?
Oh, well, I mean, that's a really big topic. In rugby league, the world got turned upside down. I mean, when Rupert Murdoch decides to bring Foxtel to Australia, he looks at which sport he wants to pick. He picked NRL. Kerry Packer and Channel 9 had the rights. He wanted them. Heads were butting, so they just decided to make their own competition, and it was tumultuous to say the least. So, bottom line was, I was just a young bloke. My brother had just left the police force to come down and manage me, which was a riskiest thing. Within the matter of about 6 months, here we are, get the phone call, get down to Sydney, you got a meeting with Lachlan Murdoch and Ken Cowley and all the heavies from News Limited. It's on, and by that time they'd signed half of the game up, half of the teams in the NRL, And they saw that Newcastle was pivotal for some reason, that they thought whoever got Newcastle will get the rest. So I went down there, and basically the level that they were thinking was just mind-blowing. They're going, we're going to take the go. Obviously, we're in England and France. This is what we're going to do there, but we're going to America, and throwing in things from, mate, you get your commentary job in America, we're doing this. And I'm going, okay, that's great, but what about Newcastle? Newcastle's got its own team. Because that's okay. We're going to build another stadium. And I'm going, oh, wow, okay. And then when it came to the money, it was just mind-blowing. I couldn't believe it. So I remember leaving that door with my brother, walking down the carpet to press the elevator to go downstairs, going, my life's just changed, but how am I going to tell the ARL, the original administration, that I'm going to Super League? And by the time I got down, we drove across to Phillip Street, where the NRL headquarters was, go up in their lift, and it's like a bomb shelter. There's like people standing there with lots of people around them trying to explain what the latest, like you're trying to share the latest news and what's going on. And I remember very distinctly there was James Packer and all the heavies from the NRL and Channel 9. And when my brother eventually told them what's going on the other side of the war and what they're offering and what they're doing, they were shattered. They were absolutely shattered. So they kicked us out for a little bit, and they came back, and we started discussing, how this is going to look and what we're going to do. And to chop that story short, at the end of the day, they pretty well took the money out of it. So that wasn't a decision anymore. And it just came down to, what are you going to do? And they put it this way. They said, these guys, Rupert Murdoch, he doesn't care about rugby league or the junior system. Not interested. They just want to take the elite game, put it on their Foxtel, their pay TV. That's it. The game's going to finish. So you've got all your juniors, and representing, you want to represent Australia again. They haven't got any of that stuff. And a whole list of things. So to me, at the end of the day, it was a bit of a no-brainer. But I signed, I travelled back to Newcastle, but little did I know is that the Super League guys were in Newcastle and they were ready to pounce on the team. I mean, literally all over them, and they were everywhere. They sent every heavy hitter that they had down to Newcastle. So all the Johns brothers and all our key players as a team, and our administration already said, we're out of here, we're going. But the town wanted to stay loyal to the ARL or the NRL at those days. So I've gone back to a really, really tough scenario where I said, I think I'm the only guy in town who's listened to both sides, because either you already got swallowed up by the Super League as a whole, or there's only me and I think maybe, I think Ricky Stewart was another guy who listened to both sides. So I wanted everyone else to have that opportunity. And it was really hard to do because they were getting sidelined. The Super League guys wouldn't let us go down. So it looked like this. We're at training. The ARL or the NRL, the one that I signed with, said, are you going to bring the guys down? We can't get up to Newcastle. We're so busy. And I said, yeah, great, no worries. We'll come down. But then our Newcastle Knights hierarchy came to train and said, do not go to Sydney. Do not go to Sydney. The ARL are going to chop her up here. Channel 9's Packers organise it. They come up here to talk to you, so do not go down. So we were sweet. We started training, and then 2 hours later, they're ringing, where are you guys? And I said, you're flying up. We just got told. He said, no, they're not. They're infiltrating. You've got to get up here. So that's where I had to go to the local Dennis Smith rental truck, and I got the lowest, the lowest minibus you've ever seen. Got all the boys in the back and drove them down to Sydney, and I was known as a bus driver then forever and a day.
And then the story, and Newcastle stayed in, won the Premiership '97, and that was history. You had the bus before Ivan Cleary asked people to get on the bus.
Get on the bus.
Now, Michael Clarke, when you started, it was a very different game to the game that you left. Nutrition changed, money changed, training changed, recovery, everything changed. And cricket, this traditional sport, it changed with it. Can you give us your snapshot of that?
I think the greatest example is you look at someone like Shane Warne, who refused to do any sort of fitness work. His cardio was bowling in the nets for an hour or sitting at the bar, to someone like David Warner, who goes to the gym every day. I think that's probably a great example of where the generations sit. But both very successful, and for mine, Warnie's probably the greatest player I've ever played with. So I do feel like there is still room for a balance in sport. I think sometimes we can I think we can look a little too deep. I think at the end of the day, for a cricketer, it's about watching the ball and trying to hit it as a batsman, or a bowler running in and trying to put a ball in a certain area. The disciplines are exactly the same. So, yes, cricket has come a long way. When I first started, it was professional, but in my opinion, it wasn't. You know, I grew up with a sister who did triathlon, so if I went and watched her train in preparation for doing a triathlon, who wasn't a professional athlete, and then I went to training, I wasn't training. You know, now you watch the boys and the girls train in regards to the Australian teams, and they have the full dedication. It's 24/7. It's a full-time job. You know your responsibilities, and I think that comes across in all codes now. So yes, there has been a big transition or a big change, but I think that's just where times are in all sport. But I believe personally there's room for both. I still like a bit of the old school heritage and tradition, certainly in the game that I love, in cricket, that we probably let go of too quickly in the current era and generation. And I think that balance with having, you know, past players like Justin Langer as head coach. I know Ricky Ponting's doing some coaching in and around the team. Even the junior levels, the under 17s and 19s in different states, they get a lot of the older players back in to help educate the young boys and girls. And I think that is the balance you want. You want the modern day professionalism with the love and the passion that, you know, the older generation, that's why they played. A lot of those guys, you think of Alan Border, David Byrne, the Chappells, these guys didn't get paid. So they played for one reason and one reason only. That was because they loved it. And I think that's got to still be the same focus no matter how much you're getting paid.
Caitlin, netball, fantastic game. Participation through the roof. Now on commercial TV. But for players like you who have been at that elite level for so long, it's always been a battle, hasn't it, to cut through, to get to that commercial edge, to get to that, hey, come on, we are on Broadway.
I do get a little bit frustrated sometimes when I see all these new emerging female sports come to light and they have the backing and support of male sports, and, you know, AFL women's standing up and saying, we want the same money as the men. And I think, wow, when I got given my first contract at age 16, it was $50. Yeah. And I was like, oh, am I paying you that money? Like, I didn't understand. Like, I was like, oh, you're giving me my uniform and I get to go away every second weekend. And I was still in high school. It was mind-blowing. And I think the top paid player, who was an Australian player at that time, she was paid probably $11,000 for the whole season. And so now, you know, the young girls in our group get a minimum of $30,000. That's the minimum wage now for an elite netballer, which when I think back to me when I was 16 and getting that first contract, how completely different it is. But I guess going back to that piece that you just talked about, Pup, about, you know, the older players and they did it for the love. We had the older players that went to bat for us, and that went to the politicians and said, look, this is a fantastic sport. You know, we can really get some good buy-in, get us on TV, give us some sponsors. Netball can be such a great vehicle for great messages and to help develop our community. And I guess for me, I could probably walk away from netball tomorrow and get a job and get paid exactly the same amount that I get in my netball contract. But for me, I stick around and I love it because of the girls who fought for me when I was young. I now want to do the same thing for the ones below me. And it's not necessarily about being able to buy a house or have a fancy car. It's about what netball has taught me. When I first started playing netball as a gangly 16-year-old girl, I had zero self-confidence. I wanted to be a boy because I'd never seen an elite female athlete. I'd switch on the TV and it was, you know, constantly seeing men, and open the paper and it was all about the men. So to think that now hopefully what I'm doing can help affect the younger generation, and hopefully my actions can encourage them to do the same for the ones beneath them, is what really drives me. Netball has changed a ridiculous amount in the last 17 years that I've been in the sport, and I hope it does continue changing over the next decade, but I want traditions and I want things to be kept the same, because For me, the game I learnt when I was young, I want that to be the game that others learn when they're young, and the game that I play when I slip on the green and gold playing for Australia, I want that to be the same game that a young girl who's, playing at a local netball station does as well. So certain things like that are really important for me, but I understand that for the growth of netball and for longevity of netball, and to now fight and come up against some of these other female sports that are now hitting our industry who have big money behind them, that we have to evolve, we have to be really smart, and we have to learn how to work with business to make sure that netball is going to be around for another 100 years.
Craig, yeah, beautifully said. Craig, football. Football is the biggest game in the world, the biggest sport in the world. Can it in Australia ever push through the battle from within? Because it's handicapped itself forever. Where is the game and where does it go?
It's in a difficult period at the moment after a really strong period of growth. In the early 2000s, in fact, on the weekend we had the 15-year anniversary of the game where they beat Uruguay. The guys, when after 32 years they got to Germany 06 World Cup. And that was an inflection point, and in the ensuing decade, there was a lot of growth. But football is afflicted by some of the same things you might say that politics are, and that's the federal nature of the administration of our body. I think rugby union have some similar issues there, and back in the 80s, AFL made what was a really a transformative move when they went to an independent commission at the top. And so our game's always found that really difficult. We have all the states have their own power bases, and you've got from the top down trying to kind of control them. And so our game's always been afflicted by multiple levels of politics that gets in the way of just sound, consistent vision and decision making. And we're kind of, sadly, we're a little bit back there again at the moment. But we're optimists. We love the game, so we hope that we're going to sort it out.
The 2023 Women's World Cup is
immense,
sitting there, isn't there? What do you think of Origin last night? I could ask it. It's like I don't really want to mention it.
It is the elephant in the room. No, I've been hurting all day and getting plenty of texts from people north of the border saying things like, "Worst team in 40 years, eh?" Stuff like that. We're only going to get better. That was really hard. That was a hard game to watch.
It was, and that's about as much as we want to say. I could see a maroon. You're a maroon. I'm married to a Queenslander, but she doesn't care. I hate Queensland. No, that's a joke. That's a joke. I love it. I want to go to Noosa. Actually, Michael, the role of the sports administrator has become increasingly high profile. What do you make of that?
I think administration is extremely important. There's no doubt about it. And I think you look across, I think that's been one of the significant differences in cricket, that our structure from the bottom is all the way to the top. Again, you just asked Craig about football. I feel like probably football in this country, soccer and rugby union, there's a huge gap between those steps from young boys and girls getting the opportunity to then getting the chance to play at the highest level. So I think cricket's very lucky, and that's taken a lot of time and a really clear structure. So I do think administration's important, but I think there's a balance as well. I probably experienced both sides of that through my career. Certainly when I took over the captaincy of Australia, there was a really clear and clean division between me as captain, the people that sat above me, that led me to the CEO of Cricket Australia, and then the board that sat above him. Through my captaincy, I think that changed. I think we brought in a high performance manager. Our chairman of selectors got a more significant role. The coach became the head coach, so got a more significant role. And I think that created some inconsistencies and a much harder line to get to the boss. We've all got a boss. Mine was the CEO, who was James Sutherland. Like I say, when I took over the captaincy, I could pick up the phone and go straight to him. Over that process, then I had to go through 3 or 4 other people to get to James. So that, when you're introduced into a system that you're used to and accustomed to and comfortable with, when that changes halfway through your captaincy, that was one of the challenges that I had to face. I would still like to think like in any business, the CEO can still talk to the person driving the van or the person sweeping the floor, or yes, there is a process, don't get me wrong, but I believe that's part of any successful sporting team or business. You don't ask anybody to do something you won't do yourself. And I think that relationship with, whether you're captain of the team and you're talking to the 18-year-old youngster that comes in, and that conversation might be in a nightclub at midnight because that's where he wants to go, or it's with a 37-year-old man who's married with 3 kids, and that conversation might be at 5 a.m. because he's crying and we're having coffee together. I think that's part of your job and your responsibility as well. You employ people to do a job, whether it is, if you're a batsman, you're employed to make runs. If you're a captain, you're employed to make the decisions on the field. If you're the CEO, you're employed to run the business. And as long as those lines are clear and you are doing your role, I think there's room for both, and I think they're both very important, the player, the athlete, and then the administrator. The issue a lot of the time with all sports is when people have too much power and want to get too involved and want to employ people but not allow them to do their jobs. And I see that, and I speak to Laurie Daly every day. We talk about rugby league. We spoke to Paul McGregor today, and one of the things that sticks in mind about his coaching career with the Dragons, it got to a stage where I felt like he actually couldn't do his job because there was people above him not allowing him to do his job. Again, as Craig mentioned, it's no different to politics. You can be the Prime Minister of this country, but he says, I want the Queensland border open. Premier says, I'm not opening the border. Is the Prime Minister in charge? Well, in theory he is, but really he's not. And I think that's where the issues lie in sport as well. Who's in charge? Who's accountable? What's my job? What decisions can I make? And the other side, what is not my area? What don't I touch? If you know that at the start, you either accept what's going to happen and take on the job, or for some people, you don't do that. So, like I say, I probably experienced both sides. I think the balance is important, and I don't know what it's like right now for Aaron Finch and Tim Payne as captain. And your personality dictates that as well. Ricky Ponting liked the coach doing a lot more than, say, I did, for example. I was a bit of a control freak and wanted to know what our team was doing. Ricky was a bit more, just let things go and leave that to John Buchanan. So individually, you've got to work out your style as well. But, yeah, I do think there's room for both. And I think, administration running a business is what sport is now. But as a player, like I say, you play because you love the game.
Caitlin, what can netball become? It's as you mentioned before, it's changed a lot since you wanted to be a boy because you couldn't see a female sports star that you wanted to be. It has moved light years ahead, but there's a lot of growth left.
Yeah, look, I was hoping it would become an Olympic sport in the next few years while I'm still playing, but I doubt that that's going to happen, unfortunately. Look, the sky is the limit for netball, and I think sponsors and major global companies are really just sitting up now and realising the benefit that having access to so many females can give. We are the key decision makers in many households. So, ladies...
fully aware of that.
I know, right? So...
What do you mean many?
Yeah.
Tell me one.
Okay, most.
We're cognizant and obedient. Yeah.
Exactly. So we do wear the pants. And businesses are just starting to realise how important it is to tap into that market and the decisions that are made in the home and how that can benefit them. So I think, from my perspective, the media jumping on board and having netball on free-to-air TV has just been massive. I remember back in the day we were on ABC. We got one game that was televised a month, and that I remember that because that was the game that I did my hair properly. But like I said, for young girls to be able to open, what?
Brilliant.
Yeah,
I love it.
Look good, feel good, play good.
I love it.
So look, for a young girl to be able to open the paper and see her favourite sports star, achieving what she wants to on the court or off the court in that regard is fantastic. But I think, we need more access to that media and we need them to jump on board. In the off-season, we're pretty much forgotten. There was some headlines a couple of months ago. We were up in the hub in Queensland. I do love Queensland. And they were, the back page of the newspaper said nothing about the fact that the Melbourne Vixens had just won our premiership, and it was just about footy on the back page and things like that. And so it is disappointing, and we're going to continue pushing that and hopefully making the media aware that we do deserve that airtime, we do deserve that print time as well, because that's the only way that our sport is going to grow. I mean, most people when they were young started watching, for me, I grew up in Perth, AFL because it was on TV all the time. Saturday night, put on the TV, AFL was on. So of course I started watching it. Well, what if netball was on TV in the afternoon when you got home from school and things like that? I just think the sky's the limit for us, but we need to make sure that we're going to do it properly. We need to make sure that we're aligning with the right people. I'm a big believer in that when you form a relationship or a partnership with a company that you really believe in, it's going to transcend to so much more than just a financial agreement. So, making those right partnerships that's going to serve netball, and making sure that if we do need to take a little bit of time to make sure we do last another 100 years, it's what we do. We're fighting at the moment between, are we an entertainment factor or are we a national sporting body? Are we going to change our uniforms to make more men switch netball on TV? Personally, that's something I'm going to fight against for the rest of my career. We are elite female athletes, so we deserve to be treated exactly like the male athletes. We put in as much time and effort, and probably at times we do make a lot more sacrifices in terms of physically. There's a lot of girls who are going through fertility issues for what we do to achieve what we want on court. So
absolutely.
That's like
Timmy, I reckon the free-to-air thing is a big one.
Yeah.
I think particularly in this country, and I love Fox, don't get me wrong, and I love you see there's so many different ways to watch sport these days, but I still think in this country, free-to-air is so important because we're so competitive with so many options with sport, and that's the challenge as well. So as an athlete, you feel that way, but how do you go and tell an administrator if they're going to get more money to go and just be on Fox versus 9, for example? How do you go to the CEO or how do you go to the administrator and say, we would prefer for our sport less money right now, but a better product over the next 10, 20 years? Very hard to do as an athlete when you're playing. And I think that's one of the challenges a lot of sports face in this country, that you're fighting for that money to pay the business. But I think there's so much power in free-to-air television, particularly in Australia.
Yeah, netball has that. Netball has that little carrot. Now, Chief, I was going to look. Newcastle's supposed to be a working class town. You get your sandwich at lunchtime, you make your sausages at night. But mate, if you look at the football team,
make your sausages.
Yeah, what?
That's all they eat. I'm a vegetarian.
I know you're a vegetarian, but I'm just trying to get a few colloquialisms out there, like working class, fibro house, whatever. Okay. But you guys are like Bold and the Beautiful. It has been, if you look at the football club, you look at the Newcastle Knights Football Club from the days where you hired that bomb of a minibus to now, and you've been in the middle of a lot of it as well, not causing it, but trying to help and fix it. It's been a drama.
Like all sporting franchises, you have different models. You can be owned by the community, you can be owned privately owned, you have a bit of both. We were always owned by the 10 or 12 rugby league clubs that played in Newcastle, come together, put the franchise in, got it. And that was a wonderful thing for people like myself, where everyone prior to me had to leave Newcastle, like all regional areas, go to the city and play. So that was a wonderful thing, but it had its issues because we always struggled with money. We never had a leagues club. And traditionally in NRL, it's all about the leagues club. AFL very much with membership is a big contributor, and other sports have their own unique ways of driving income. So we didn't have any income coming in, so it was just all about the crowds. So we had huge crowds. We were lucky in the sense that when rugby league first started in England in the late 1800s, it was basically rugby union. And the guys who were in the coal mines were getting injured playing rugby union, and they wouldn't let them have like a players fund, injured players fund, just so they could get a bit of money in case they couldn't work. So because of the rugby union's really tough stance on amateur football, they broke away a little bit, and they were well and truly shunned. And over a period of time, they introduced the play the ball. But a lot of those northern English coal miners came to Newcastle when the first settlement came, so very much entrenched in the game. So in 1908, And 1909, when the rugby league competition started here in Sydney, we travelled down by train. And that was a huge commitment. We did that for 2 years and knocked it on the head. So I'm trying to paint the picture that our town very much loved the game, but we had this franchise in the big time, but we didn't have any money. So we struggled for a long, long time. But we really concentrated on the things, I suppose, become really self-eccentric, is that, okay, we didn't have a lot of money, but we do love the game, and what's important to us. Our view of the world or how the game should be played is unique to us. And we started, I suppose, cutting a tolerance or giving off a vibration. This is who we are. If you like it or you resonate with us, come to the club. But if you don't worry about it. So our town is very much unique on toughness. So as long as we played and we give it all, we never lost a game because the other team wanted more than us. And we're a very physical town too. So as long as we weren't dominated or someone was running roughshod over us, they didn't like that, the crowd. But there's a few really basic things that cemented who we were. We stuck to that for the first 10 years. And it wasn't until after that we started getting momentum. We win the grand final. Unfortunately, as I said before, the Super League will come. But we go through this up and down scenario. And as a player, it was really hard because sometimes we didn't know if there's going to be trouble at the end of the year as far as your contract is concerned. Stability was something that was kind of rare for a little bit. But as time went on, I remember, we had a couple of scenarios where someone wanted to buy the club, one of our local leagues club, which was huge. They turn over $100 million a year, wanted to take over the club. It didn't happen. But I ended up finishing my career by this time, but a guy that I knew quite well by the name of Nathan Tinkler, who was a local Newcastle boy, who basically became a billionaire overnight. He made $300 million, flipped it and made $600 million, and then made $1 billion. He's going, mate, I'll have the locals, the soccer team, the Jets, and I love the footy. We got the footy and whatever else. And he was a great guy, and I thought, unreal, we're going to get stability. We're going to get stability. We had money laid everywhere. We got the best coaches, and away we went. But unfortunately, that didn't give stability either. There is a real, there's a real cross section between having, private money or money and being owned by the public, and it's not until you get a unique combination of both, I reckon, till you get real stability in a club. And I'm happy to say at the moment that went into administration. I was on the board at that time. In fact, I was the chairman. I was the executive. It was a really tough scenario. So we had to bring the NRL in. We had some great guys like John Quayle, who's an incredible executive for the league over many years, and ushered us out of that scenario into a new one where now we're owned by the West Group, which is just a leagues club that's been there for decades and decades. That's just worth an incredible amount of money. But they're owned by the members. It's 150,000 local people in Newcastle, the members of that club. Wow. And that gives we have stability and we're going from strength to strength. But at the end of the day, we found that we hung in there and we got through by working out really early who we are, what we stand for. And I must admit, there was a few times there when coaches would come from out of town who'd sort of treat us a little bit as if we knew nothing, and they say, get out of the road and sort of not respect our culture. And that really troubled us, get rid of our key players and to and what we meant to the town. They just didn't quite get it. Where you can imagine Manchester United and all those great soccer teams, they know who they are. Anyone who goes into that club, they fit into them. And that's something that we've always tried to do now, is that this is who we are, this is what we give off as a vibration, and if you attract to us, that's great. And we think that over a period of time, people around Australia and around the globe who love rugby league, if you resonate with us, you'll support us.
Yep.
And we don't have to be anything that we're not.
Absolutely. All right, Claudia, we do have questions from the World Wide Web or from a virtual world, and we'll take a couple of questions from here as well.
Mike and Gabe Bassett back in Perth, yep.
So this one's for you, Caitlin.
Oh, there you go, I told you.
It's tough.
Mike and Gay, yep. When are you going to call us? Yep. Are you coming over for Christmas?
So do you think there will ever be a time where there is a male netball combat at a national level?
Yes, I do. In Perth, they have a men's state league at the moment, and here in New South Wales, there's some amazing men's players as well. It's quite funny when we're preparing for big competitions like Commonwealth Games and World Cup, we always play against the Australian men's team. There's nothing like playing against a man to really demoralise yourself. They can run so fast and jump so high. I'm 6'4", they can reject every single one of my shots. And so I think the talent that's here within Australia, I think definitely I'm looking forward to it to growing. I know at the moment the fact that netball is a female participator sport. That's nice and shiny, and we hang our hat on that. But I definitely think that there's room for equality in that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the men's team growing in years to come, and I love watching the men play and playing against them from time to time.
We'll take one more question because it's so tight for time, and the answers have been so fantastic. Thank you, Claudia.
All right, this one's for Paul. Why do you think the City of Newcastle has such a tight relationship with the local community, and has it helped the club keep going through the lean years?
Very much so. Well, I think I kind of maybe stumbled on that before a little bit, why they're so tight. As I said, it's very much a part of the psyche of, I suppose, the early settlers into our area, that they brought the game with them. Very much traditional, hard-working BHP, steelworks, all that type of stuff, fitted into rugby league, and they played their sport. But without a doubt, that tightness that we had between the club and the people, it was like a big family before. Like with sporting teams now, you can hardly get to see anyone. There's a big wall between the media person and talking to the player. Very early on, we had a good 10 or 15 years where it was just open slather. Everyone was a part of it. The journos would come into the dressing room, sit down with you, maybe have a beer and talk. Now it's completely different, but same with the people and the fans. It's very interactive. As I said, it was the 10 or 12 clubs locally became one and represented. So without a doubt, the key to us still being here and surviving through all those very tough financial years is that actual fact alone. So very, very important for us.
Caitlin, Michael,
Awesome.
Paul, thank you so much.
Thanks,
and Craig, you're going to stay with us through the course of this. And I just want to throw to a very, very special part of our evening now, because we know that sports, society, community and education, it's a fascinating bond that all creates. Craig had a fantastic opportunity to sit down with Adam Goodes, who, if you've ever met Adam Goodes, your life has changed. He's one of those remarkable human beings. Here is a snapshot of that interview.
Hello and welcome. I'm Adjunct Professor of Sport and Social Responsibility at Torrens University, Craig Foster, and I'm joined by a former athlete who's redefining the nature of what it means to be both a champion and a social change maker, shaping the future of the nation. A two-time Brownlow medalist for the best and fairest player of the AFL, two-time flag winner with the Sydney Swans, and former Australian of the Year. Today, Adam Goodes is changing lives and challenging Australia to be better. Welcome, Adam. Great to see you, buddy.
You too, mate. Thanks.
So you're an amazing player in AFL, one of the greatest in history. You're in the Indigenous Team of the Century. You're four-time All-Australian. You won several flags. Because we play together in football, and you're kicking goals there as well. You got 15 this season.
Yeah. No, it's been good. I think for me, sport has always been the leveler for me. It was, we moved around quite a fair bit as a family. We went to 6 different primary schools, 2 different high schools, and sport was the way that we sort of broke down those barriers that you face when you're the new skinny black kid or new Indigenous family moving into the community. So, we went from being, the new kids on the block to the first kids picked in their soccer teams, their football teams, which made it so much easier. That sport was that barrier breaker for me.
And, now as you age and look back and you're doing such wonderful work through your Go Foundation and helping the new generation of, sporting kids and students, is that why you get a real sense of the power of sport, what it can do for young people?
So sport for me was also the reason I stuck at school. It was the way that Mum used sport as us to stay at school, to get good grades, because if we didn't, she wouldn't let us play. And for me, I love playing sports, so it meant going to school every day, getting good grades, and in the end, enjoying school and knowing that, you know, sport in a way was that vehicle to keep me in school. And, you know, team sports for me is something that I find can keep a lot of kids out of trouble, keeps their mind occupied, that keeps them fit and healthy, and it just makes it easier for them to, you know, be at school when they are, you know, playing sports as well.
And I just wonder how far we've come as a sporting industry in Australia. What's your view?
Look, I think, especially in the AFL, they definitely pride themselves of being you know, always raising the bar on social responsibility. And you're always, whenever you're part of an organisation and a system, you know, wanting that across the code and the leagues that you sort of govern. But for me, you know, our society is very unique, and there's always going to be small pockets. And you know, I think that the football leagues and the you know, all the games that are played in our country needed to come together and make a bigger statement than I think that what happened, and they can still do that. Because, you know, we can control who comes to the games. We can control, you know, who has membership. You know, we can help educate the people when they come into the stadiums, the courts, the arenas. So there's a big responsibility for them if they want to take that on, because if they don't, then, you know, the best players that are playing out there come from all over the world, and their ancestry is from all over the world. And not being there'll be Indigenous players, there'll be Italians, Greeks, you know, Sudanese. We need to celebrate that. We're celebrating them on the field, but we're not actually supporting them off the field with, you know, what's happening online, what's happening in the streets. It's about how do we work better together to make sure that they are protected and safe, not only on the field, but off the field as well.
How do we go about then educating a new generation of sport leaders? To their, you know, the future of sport is about dealing with difficult social conversations in a more meaningful way. You know, how important is that?
It's incredibly important. What I'm seeing at universities is, you know, this colour blindness, which is so refreshing. You know, I've gone to maybe 15, 20 graduation ceremonies and done talks at those, and it just melts my heart seeing these young people from all different types of background coming up and accepting, you know, their honour. And it is just, it makes me feel proud that that generation are going to be our future leaders. And unfortunately, we have to wait maybe 10, 20 years for that to happen. And they're already looking at you and I and going, what's wrong with your generation? You know, how did it take us so long to have a plebiscite, to have and agree to same-sex marriage? Why have we not had a plebiscite already to, you know, give Indigenous people in Australia a voice and written into our constitution? How has that not happened yet? So for me, they are the future, and we need to keep educating them and keep challenging them, but also giving them platforms and giving them a voice, because their voice is only going to get stronger and louder. And, you know, on issues that, you know, we at times don't take seriously. And that might be racism, might be climate change, might be any Indigenous movements that are happening in our country.
We see athletes throughout history, Billie Jean King with gender equality, and of course, you know, everyone knows Tommy Smith and John Carlos and Pete Norman, actually, the great Australian in '68 and Mexico Olympics and so on. Athlete activists, they were called. Because they stepped outside of these confines of sport. Today, it's perhaps more prominent than ever. You know, you see LeBron James and Megan Rapinoe, the captain of the US women's national team, you know, and they're taking a knee. It's cost Colin Kaepernick, you know, basically his career. What's your view on that?
I think, you know, athletes, you know, we have an incredible platform, and sometimes we can talk, but not everyone's going to listen. And that's fine, because you can't make everyone listen either. But it's those sort of actions which can make, you know, taking a knee during the national anthem, that is a very big moment in time. And that takes a lot of courage to do, because, you know, that national anthem, especially to the Americans, you know, don't ever, you know, bow your head. You know, you stand up proud and you sing that song. And for me, it's a way that the athletes can do something without saying anything more. We can't keep talking to you. We can't keep telling you what we want, and we can't keep telling you that this needs to stop. This action is in, you know, as part of the movement and in spite of what's happening. And we talk about Black Lives Matter and the movement behind, you know, their actions as athletes to do that. So in a way, it's the athletes being forced to do that because their voice is no longer being heard. And, you know, I fully support those athletes in doing that. And, you know, I fully support any athlete in Australia who uses their platform positively to start conversations. You know, Adam Goodes, why did you take that knee at the AFL Grand Final day? You know, if that happened, it's a conversation starter. People will talk about it. People would see it all around the nation. And then that's the moment where people start talking about it. Oh, I hate Goodes for doing that. You know, how could he do that? Why doesn't he go back to, you know, where he comes from? You know, these comments that come, but that's where the conversation starts, and that's where people on social media and Facebook have conversations with each other, and we then talk about it in classrooms, and that's where that change happens, you know, through those discussions.
And isn't, you know, the things we learn on the sporting field and in those teams, isn't that what it's all about? Because we come together, you know, we're playing football together with Waverley here, and when we take the field, we shake hands with the opponents. Yep. We come together under agreed rules where everyone is equal. Yep. No one is less than anyone else. And we come together in this fair space to just play together. It's a great metaphor for life, right?
It is. And for me, it was always the sporting field where I was treated equal. I was never the young Indigenous black kid that just came to our community. I was the new kid that could play, and it was exciting that everybody wanted on their team. So it was this incredible leveler for me, and it has been for a lot of you know, Indigenous people. The sporting field has been that place, and only a small amount of people get the opportunity to do that. But then only a small amount of those people then, you know, have the courage or power or platform to do good with that and continue to do good with it. And I think that's the game changer that we're looking for. And, you know, while we're having these discussions, and the students that are listening, is about, you know, how do we give you the knowledge and the power and the platform, the voice, the courage to, you know, take up the challenge with us, you know, come walk beside us. If not, you know, run in front of us 100 metres and be the leaders that we want our young people to be in this country.
Your personal impact, or the responsibility that you feel on behalf of your own culture, but also for the entire nation, you must have felt that very keenly as Australian of the Year. Now, you were one of only 12 former athletes, the true greats, you know, Rose, Dawn Fraser, you know, Border is in there, and Steve Waugh, and Kathy Freeman, you know, that is the best of the best. What did that feel like? Is that a weight of responsibility on you that for your people, and how can you continue to make the greatest impact through that?
I think for me, to be brutally honest, I didn't want to accept the award based on the fact that it was the Australia Day Awards, and I have my own mixed feelings towards that day and the celebration of that in this country. And Adam Gilchrist was actually the chair of the Australia Day Committee. I love Gilly, he's an incredible Australian, and he totally understood my point of view. He said, but if you do win it, this is an incredible platform to talk about all the things you're passionate about. And that really got me, you know, turned my, you know, perception around on the awards, and how it was for 12 months going to be an incredible platform to talk about racism, to talk about constitutional recognition, and to talk about, you know, domestic violence in our community, all things that, you know, drastically affect Indigenous people, but also affect a lot of people in our community. So I saw it as a great opportunity in the end, and it really was. It's something that I was still playing footy, so it was really hard to, you know, keep having and using the platform, because I actually had to go out and play footy every week after it. But it definitely was an incredible opportunity that, you know, I'm glad I took up, and I'm glad I had Gilly there right behind me.
Well, Adam, you said that as a footballer you wanted to be known for much more. You certainly are. You've done extraordinary things, both on the field, of course, where you're a great champion, but far, far more so off the field, where you're leading not just Indigenous Australia, but I would argue you're one of the key leaders within the Australian context itself. So congratulations on all of your achievements to date. There's many more to come, and for being a social change maker.
Thanks, Craig.
Adam Goodes. And great chat, Craig, great chat. And let's continue this theme of advocacy, because it's a huge area and it's a subject that we can explore, and we've got a couple of wonderful people to come up onto the stage. Claudia, please, why don't you sit next to Craig, because I'd love to get a question from yourself while you're up here as well. And also joining us, she was goalkeeper to her brothers when she was 6 years old, gone on to be one of the faces, one of the voices of football, the beautiful game in this country. Been off our screens for a little while as she gave birth to a beautiful little girl, and back now. Can we get a big round of applause for Lucy Zellick, ladies and gentlemen? I've covered this guy's career from when it started. He's from a small town called Ivanhoe of 200 people, Melbourne Storm, Canberra, Dragons, Manly, and now he's off for the sunny, balmy weather of St Helens. He is Joel Thompson. Now, Joel, if I can come to you first, we just heard from Adam Goodes. You're a proud Indigenous man, captain the Indigenous All-Stars. What are your thoughts on what we just watched?
Yeah, just extremely proud. You know, he spoke about the platform that he had, and he's made a real difference. And, you know, hearing stories, you know, I live with my nan, and hearing stories about what she went through and how she was treated and a lot of our people, and hearing him, you know, stand up for what was right, you know, and have that voice. You know, I just think of all my little cousins and all those little kids out in, you know, the remote places that don't have that voice, and they don't have that, but they see someone like Adam Goodes, you know, your superstar AFL, speaking up and standing up for what was right. You know, it's quite powerful, and it's changing lives, and it's starting important conversations in Australia that need to happen. You know, we want to move forward, and we need everyone in Australia to be beside us to do that. So, you know, just extremely proud.
Lucy, does sport have an obligation to give back
Bloody
to
oath
the people
it does.
and communities to support it?
Bloody oath it does. I mean, when I think about, and I'll take, because we are here at Bankwest Stadium, I'll use Western Sydney Wanderers as an example. When I think about why this football club team was such a success, it's because it had the support of a thriving, booming community that had this rich tapestry of history and a connection to football. And they've continued to sustain that success even through the lean years. You still get supporters that are so passionate to support this club and will do everything at all costs to do so. So I think that, you know, they're not mutually exclusive. In order to have a successful sporting club, you need to have a thriving community supporting it. And in order to have that thriving community, you need to give them an opportunity to believe in something, to subscribe to something. And sport gives us the opportunity to do that. Sport gives us the opportunity to really forget about life's woes and to invest in something that makes us feel alive, that connects us to something that transcends all of our issues, that transcends all of our beliefs, whether they be political, religious, whatever they are. We're able to come together and to really commit to something that makes us feel alive. And I think that sport definitely has an obligation to give back to those communities, because we've seen the benefits that these sporting clubs have been able to reap from those communities. I mean, when I think about growing up in the National Soccer League era that's now obviously defunct, you know, for us, these football clubs were built off the back of these communities, and they had the types of relationships where there was this level of mutual respect between the lady that served the chabapi at the canteen and the coach who led the team out and experienced great success. I mean, these are the types of relationships that all sporting clubs should look to build with their communities. And when you start to see a sporting club struggle. It was great to really listen to Paul when he talked about why Newcastle were able to sustain those difficult periods and those lean financial years, because they had the support of the community. And that's really important. And as soon as you start to disrespect the community and you start to treat the fans as though they're unimportant, that's when you start to see a football club really struggle. And I think for so many of us who are so passionate about the beautiful game, for myself in particular, when you look at some of the most prominent sporting global brands in the world, your Manchester Uniteds, your Liverpools, and these big clubs, you realise that they all started somewhere, but it all started from the love of the community. And that's a really important feature.
Absolutely. And the point you touched on early in that answer was the idea that sport is this escape, is this sense of theatre. Well, this year, Craig, that was all ripped up because we went through a period of this pandemic where everything stopped. And advocacy is in so many areas, and the initiative where you were getting sports people, sports clubs, and we went and we did a story on it, did a story together on TV. And what that gave to those people when they went in there and participated to help those that were struggling to put food on the table was amazing.
Yeah, and there was an ulterior motive, and that was to bring sport and high-profile athletes. And we had some of the Swans come down, and Ty Kennelly came down, and Nicky Smith is an amazing guy, and Kieran Jack and others, and many Matildas and so on. It was to get them in a position where they could actually meet and see and come to understand so many of these communities who are in need, because they're invisible. And these are discussions, to Joel's point before, that should be had. And sport can create those discussions. We can actually create immense social good. But the question that we have to ask is, I think a natural human impulse is to want to believe in something. And to hope and inspiration, foundational parts of sport. And the reason people love sport so much is they're important parts of human nature. But we have to ask in sport, are we really just that inspired by winning another 3 points? Is it, or what is it that we're actually playing for? And do we have an obligation to not just help a Sudanese player, but to help him or her help their community when they're being demonised and attacked unfairly by the media? Or when Adam Goodes steps forward and creates what is a challenging conversation, does that reduce him as an athlete, or does that make him more than an athlete and more important than an athlete? And so sport has created this kind of culture where we're happy for people to speak up, and we'll say that we'll put statues for them as long as they talk about issues that we're comfortable with. I'll give you an example. When these guys in the NRL Indigenous All-Stars refused to sing the anthem, I thought that is just magnificent. Right? That is leadership, because that's their field. Like, these guys are the legends. They have worked hard, like Caitlin and all these, Michael and incredible and the incredible athletes. It's their platform, and they have a right in that moment to say, well, I feel strongly about these other people who may or may not be my people. I mean, I fight for refugees and asylum seekers. They can be from any country in the world, because it's wrong what's happening. So, but those conversations are challenging. So people say, well, sport, mate, you should just, LeBron James says famously, someone said to him, just bounce the basketball or whatever, right? So my question is, who chooses? Who chooses what Joel or Michael or these guys get to talk about? They choose. But in future, I'd like to see that the sport steps up. So what's happened historically is the athletes take all the pressure. And you saw the State of Origin, was it the State of Origin, Schmozzle with the anthem? So what's happened is sport itself, is still largely incapable of leading these really important discussions, and athletes are taking it on themselves, and it's incredibly difficult for them. And often they lose their careers. Colin Kaepernick's lost his career by talking about racial equality. Can you imagine? That is the reality. So sport has to confront the fact that one of the great, it doesn't matter any level of the game, a person who happens to be a professional sports person lost his career for speaking out for racial equality.
Phenomenal.
That's incredible after, you know. So when athletes do it, they are incredibly courageous, like Adam Goodes. But the future of sport is for sport to do. And I might just say finally, one of the best examples in this country is the club Richmond FC, with Brandon Gale and Peggy O'Neill showing immense leadership. They're winning multiple flags on the field while they're advocating for important social issues off it. And to Chief's point, if you're a Richmond FC fan now, you know that you're aligned with a club that stands for something. And it stands for more than just winning a flag. And I happen to think that's what sport should be about.
And there's an old saying, if you don't stand for something, you stand for nothing. Claudia, you are part of that generation that Adam Goodes referred to there. You created this business to give a voice in others to an area of sport which not many people know about. How important is advocacy in your eyes?
Oh, I fall backwards. Very important. Even I run workshops, and one that I'm really proud of is one that I did in the Central Coast. I had a friend who's a professional female athlete, and she came out. We ran a workshop for boys and girls, and then after we went on the skate park, we had some giveaways, and there were all these boys running around, I want it, I want it, I want it, and then all the girls just stood there. And she got up and she said, you guys have had all these prizes, everything for the last 20 years. Go away, this is for them. And it's just to see the smile on the kids' faces and all of that. That is, you know, she's my age, a professional skater, and inspiring the next generation. So people stepping up is super important, and pushing the girls' skateboarding scene.
Yeah, well said. You won the Ken Stephen Medal, of course, which is the medal for those outside of rugby league. This is for the community work that is done by people inside the game. And that is one thing that often doesn't get the headlines, whether you're talking about newspapers, radio or television, because it's not as sexy as some of the other stuff. But a lot of great work is done. You got the Ken Stephen Medal, but you took it a step further with the Mindset Project. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so when I was at Canberra, I was having some issues off the field. My spare time I wasn't using the best, so I got some advice that pretty much changed my life and probably saved my career. You should go out and share your story. There's a lot of kids out there who'd love to hear your story, that need that hope. So I started doing some stuff at the juvie, going out there, connected with the kids, and a lot of the things I was saying was getting through to these kids, and similar upbringing, or we faced a lot of those different challenges those kids faced, and I was very lucky with rugby league. It saved me in a big way, and I continued to do that. I felt like I wanted to make a difference. I've seen coming through a few different communities, I knew what the suffering was out there and how hard it was for a lot of these kids. I was one of them, so I just wanted to make a difference with the platform I had, and started at the juvie, and then one of the guys said, what are you doing after footy? I said, I'll continue doing this. I enjoy doing it. I felt like it was my purpose. I always thought like rugby league's my purpose in life, but it wasn't the case. It definitely wasn't. When I see kids making a change, or you put a smile on their face, or doing that, the impact I was having, I wanted to take it further, and I continued to do it. I struggled through school, but I picked up the study, started to do, my wife helped me a fair bit, but I started to do a few different courses, and trying to make a bigger difference. I wanted to, so when I'm going out there delivering stuff, that I'm, across everything, and I've had some good people a part of it, and I'll continue to do it. So heading to the UK, the next part of the Mindset Project for me would be more study, so I can make a bigger difference. And I've absolutely loved it. It's been for about 7 or 8 years now. I've been doing a lot of stuff in the community. Before that, I wasn't involved too much. This lady gave me this. She goes, go out there, and I feel like you'll love it, and I really did. I got excited on my days off to go out there and make a difference. So so the next part, UK, I'll continue to look at studying. A bit of study, and to make sure when I come back to Australia, my wife, I don't know how many years she's got me planned on playing over there, but who knows, but when I finish up and come back, I'll take the Mindset Project hopefully to the next step.
Lucy, it's often been said that before you have children, you see the world in black and white. Once you've had kids, you see it in colour, full living colour. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's very, very difficult, but wonderful all the same. The point I'm trying to make here is that you've recently become a mother. How has that driven this deep process inside of you to be better, to drive these subjects that we're discussing here?
Because I want the world to be better for her. I mean, you listen to the stories that, that so many of these tremendous people up here have shared. Listening to Adam Goodes as well, what an inspirational character. But you think the challenges that he has had to endure in his career because of racism, it breaks your heart to think that someone like him was basically kicked out of the game because of such torrid behaviour. And for him to have these memories of the latter stages of his career marred by such insidious and ugliness, to me, it's really upsetting. So now I start to think about, well, what kind of world do I want my daughter to grow up in? Do I want her to experience that level of racism? No, I don't. I mean, for me in particular, one of the things that I've had to really grapple with in my career is what I like to call unsocial media. And you and I spoke about it earlier. I used to really enjoy connecting with people on several social media platforms and having, debates and some of them actually informed and really intelligent conversations. But now it's just descended into this really ugly, intolerable place where everyone on there is just so angry and desperate to grind an axe that just is really hurtful and nasty. So for me, I think, do I want my daughter to go through that? I don't. And so quietly in the background, I've been working on my own sort of social media campaign called #BeAccountable, where I want people to start being accountable for the way that they interact online. Because when I look at the really scary and terrifying statistics of these young kids taking their own lives because of interactions that they've had with complete strangers on social media, it scares me. And not just for my own daughter, but for my nieces, for my children and their friends, for all young kids. Because we're growing up and they're growing up in a different era compared to the era that we grew up in. I never had to compete with social media. All I had to worry about was whether the boy at school thought I was cute during, 9 to 3. And then after that, I was left to my own devices to worry about if he thought I was cute overnight. So, these are the sorts of things that we have to think about now in this digital era. Life has changed. And so I think, becoming a mother, as you said, it now and being a parent, it makes you think about things really differently. And I think we have to think about these things because it's starting to affect the everyday world. The online world has infiltrated the real world. So it's important to start thinking about ways in which we can combat that, but ways in which we can make everybody accountable.
And just on that subject, Joel, because you've got 3 beautiful daughters yourself, and how much are you driven by this idea of giving them a life, giving them a strength, giving them a platform of a world that maybe you didn't get the opportunity to have?
Oh, honestly, it's everything to me. Giving them the opportunities in life and, bring them up to be resilient, confident, to play sports on TV and be, and chase down dreams and goals and not have to fight through what I had to fight through to get to, to where in my career. So, they're a big motivator for me to improve myself as a person as well, if it's to do study or, the work on myself. But yeah, my 3 girls are one of my big motivators and, I want to bring them up into a world that's, where I can make a difference, where they can see Dad doing this and helping and putting a hand down to help someone else up. And I hope they follow along the same, line and do the same. And, I had my daughter actually, she come out to some of the country towns when I was doing different workshops and she was a part of it where she was handing out booklets and, she loved it. She just wants to come all the time now. And, it means a lot to me. And like I said before, experience the upbringing that I did have, I guess that gave me that passion to know what's happening out there in the communities, and I wanted to make a difference with the platform I've got with footy and to do that. So, hopefully my girls they'll follow the lead as well.
What a great role model you are for your girls. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Nothing like a family story. Beautiful family stories. Claudia, we're one big family here, aren't we tonight? So let's get a couple of questions from the audience because we are going to cross live to Europe real soon. Claudia, they're your audience. Just down the back there. If you'd like to tell us your name and then ask you a question, that'd be wonderful. Thank you.
My name is Eyob Jesus. Came here with my wife. Craig, I just wanted to find out, do you think Australia needs a bigger conversation around cultural awareness? Because I was super lucky in terms of, getting, well-educated, speak English fluently. I think about the refugees that don't have that. My dad, although he came as a refugee, the awareness of understanding other people's culture is really, really low. Do you think it's a wider conversation, not just sports?
Oh, I do, yes. But I do think that sport has a really important part to play. In particular, I might say our sport. And so it's a really good example. So what will happen in all professional sports, but let's just take football for a moment, is we'll run wonderful programs for minority communities, and we will have all of our professional clubs, we'll have, programs for, African community in western suburbs and all of these things. But then when those communities get attacked, or those communities in trouble, or the social fabric of the country is under threat with those communities that we've been engaging with and who are part of our game, we don't say anything. We don't say anything. So we're saying, listen, we love you, we respect you, it's about equality, and these are the values that we all believe in as athletes and as sports people, right? As I said there, we shake hands and we say respect. That's what we say with FIFA. Respect among all and treat everyone equally, but only when you're in here. So that's what always troubled me. It's like, you're my teammate and we're in the change room, I'm going to fight for you, and you're on the field and you get abused. Well, that's not right, because that's going to affect us winning a game. But what happens when you get abused outside? And then what about your family and your kids and their kids? Should I say something or not? And that's where it's that line that sport really struggles with. And I'll tell you how we can solve it. So to your point, cultural competence is really important. And sometimes I have to reflect the fact that I've spent, 45 years in football, which, is diversity by definition, and also 20 years at SBS, which is multiculturalism. And so sometimes it's easy to forget that people don't live in that environment. Our family is everyone, right? So it's difficult to see why, this concept of equality just wouldn't be normal. And that, by the way, that's gender as much as cultural. I happen to believe that the future of sport is being much more comfortable speaking on these areas, and athletes are forcing it there anyway. So, an example, Kathy Freeman took the Aboriginal flag, in actual fact, before it was recognised by Keating 4 years later. She made the country recognise the flag as an official flag because she took it at the Commonwealth Games in '94 and she almost lost a career over it. Everyone went nuts. 4 years later, they recognised the flag, and then in 2000, she did it again. Everyone thought she's a star. That's social advocacy, okay? The really brave ones are there when it's not easy, but it's an incredibly important conversation. And the thing about athletes are they're brave. They're really courageous, but I'd just like to see sport accept some more of that responsibility so people just don't have to lose their careers.
I think we've got time for one more question, Claudia. Yes.
Hi guys, my name's Ian Clayton. I'm one of the senior lecturers at Torrens University. We've talked potentially about PDHB students who might be elite athletes who have to diverge from their intended career in sport through education, for example. Migrants, the same, coming into the country with lots of talent. Aboriginal kids who don't typically go to university because their predecessors never did that. I'm wondering what universities can do to not only build the new professionals in business or sport of future generations, but also what universities can do better through sport in university. It seems a bit convoluted in Australia currently.
Okay, well Lucy and Joel, we'll get your observations on this. As our final comment.
Joel, I think you're best placed purely because you are an elite athlete. I can barely kick a ball, quite frankly. So,
But you can. But Lucy, you can give the observation of how tertiary institutions can be better.
I can actually. And this is coming through the lens of going through my tertiary education at the University of Canberra, which was known as the pub uni, right? Because they didn't offer a journalism course at the Australian National University, which was seen to be the more superior uni. And I still argue that it's not because I'm from the pub uni. But what I will say is that, going through that entire system, the focus on the sporting teams was about, the guys all getting together on a weekend, getting drunk, and a guy dressing up as a cow and, going around and asking for donations because they were called the UC Cows, right? That was their commitment. You remember that, Joel? From having played down there in Canberra, the Canberra Raiders?
Yeah.
No?
Sorry. I'm sure it happened.
That's how memorable the team clearly was, right? But they didn't give enough emphasis to what sport could do for the university, to the pathways that it could potentially create for those elite athletes coming through the universities. I mean, at that time, I remember reflecting on my brother's grades when we dug them out of the cupboard, and he didn't go to university, but they were D's and E's through everything because his sole focus was purely dedicated to the sport. Now so much of that has changed because, we're understanding that sport is not forever, and you're having to think about, careers after, the sport comes to an end and your time in that sport. So for me, I think, and I hope I'm answering your question somewhat, and, and I'll let Joel take over and follow you. You might also be best placed.
Joel, I'm going to change the frame of it for you. I'm going to change the frame of it for you, but it'll still be in context. What I wanted to ask you, in context to your question, was that vocationally, because we talked about your daughters and how important education is a vital part of that. How important is for that message for universities, tertiary institutions, to be threaded through a young person's sporting career so they're not D's and E's, and they know, like I know Mitch Orbison sitting in the crowd, he's already been to uni several times, but that's a bit of a rarity in rugby league. So what do you think of that?
Yeah, again, just using my story, I went away to a boarding school. My nan put me into a boarding school, and I started that boarding school with a year 8, and I went to year 10, and I was back at year 8. So I had a teacher's aide that followed me through and helped me, catch up. And I was embarrassed going to each class. I used to say, hey, just wait there, and I'd walk off because she would follow me to all the classes. And that's where my education started. I was moving around a fair bit. I didn't go to school a lot. But then football sort of really, for me to go and play a game, I had to go to class. I had to get, and that's how footy sort of was a motivator for me. To train, I had to go and, do me schooling and get certain marks. So I worked hard at that, and I was, only one person in my family to go through and do my HSC, which was a big thing. And I continued to do the study because I wanted to make a big difference. So rugby league, the greatest game of all. The NRL really did, help me in so many ways, but also helped me education. There was grants, there was different support around, the RLPA. They support the players as well, and there's a lot of different things that they to help players now, the work with their study, if it's going to university or TAFE or whatever it is, but to work it around your training and, to give you enough time off to go and do that. So, I've continued to do the study because I know that's how I'm going to make the biggest impact. So I've continued to do it. But, from the start of my education, going back to when I was 16, and I was so far behind and I was so embarrassed to where I was at, to where I am now, it's been a big part of the NRL. Has helped me along the way and gave me the support to, chase my education and improve it.
And understanding the benefit that you can also get from sport and investing in that, and the platform that it can give to these talented individuals who are looking to pursue so much more than just being an elite athlete, who are looking to do good work in advocacy spaces and to reach out to their communities, to create mindset programs, to do these sorts of things, to have an impact. Sport has an amazing reach and an amazing ability to touch lives and to change lives beyond a pitch, beyond a court. And that's what I think we're starting to realise now as we go on.
Absolutely. Lucy, Joel, it's been an absolute delight. Can we get a round of applause for Lucy and Joel? Thank you. Claudia, also, thank you. You've nailed it. Now, here at Torrens University, we are very fortunate to partner with arguably the world's biggest sporting brand, Real Madrid.
Unarguably.
Yeah, students from the MBA program here, maybe not right at the moment because of COVID, but you know this is going to change. Have the opportunity, and we actually have a student who had the opportunity to go, and we're going to talk to him a little bit later. But Craig, that dovetails to yourself. You're a lecturer in this space as well here with Torrens.
Yeah, it's amazing. So when I found out that the NBA through Real Madrid and Madrid University was a partnership with Torrens, I thought, wow, incredible. You know, it's an iconic sports brand, and it's an extraordinary experience. In fact, one of my really close friends did the program only, I think, last year, or perhaps finished the year before, and went and spent time at Real Madrid, which was wonderful. And I think we've got a very special guest coming online. Is that right?
I'm pretty sure we do. I'll check here. Yes, we do. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, look, ladies and gentlemen, there's a famous number 7 for Real Madrid that's been worn by some of the greatest legends ever. Eden Hazard at the moment. Cristiano Ronaldo was a great striker called Raul, who many of you might know, but before that there was the real legend. His name is Emilio Butragueño. Please put your hands together for him. Emilio, thank you so much for your time. Could you tell us a little bit, please, about this graduate school that we've been discussing and why Real Madrid decided to create it?
Well, good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to be with you. First of all, I hope you and your families are well and healthy in these difficult times. Why Real Madrid is involved? What is Real Madrid involved in the academic field? Probably because we love challenges. Real Madrid is famous worldwide because of our successes on the pitch. Although, well, our activities goes beyond the pitch. For example, a good example is our foundation. It was set up more than 20 years ago, and it carries out social sport projects in more than 100 countries, and they can carry out social projects in more than 1,000 per year, and more than 100,000 people benefit from our activities. So when our current president, Florentino Perez, took over in 2000, something I have to highlight is that Real Madrid doesn't belong to anybody. We don't have an owner. We call presidential elections every 4 years. So when our president took over, probably you may know that our president is a very successful businessman, and then as soon as he took over, he started applying all his business knowledge and expertise to the club. And his arrival triggered a turning point concerning management. Well, to the extent that Harvard sent here to Madrid two professors to prepare to study cases for their MBA students. In fact, nowadays these cases are studied in many universities worldwide. So our president was able to turn a very difficult economic situation here in the club and turn it into a profitable one, and to transform the club into a very modern and cutting-edge organization. So as soon as he took over, he was really very interested in doing something in the field of education. As you may know, we were an expert at that time in that field. So, we looked for the right partner, and finally we agreed on terms with the University Europea in 2006. Why? Because we realized that a new path in sports has been opened, and we've taken, in our view, a very important role in it, and consequently we would like to share our knowledge and our experience with those who could be interested in this wonderful sport, wonderful field of sport. In fact, our goal was to train the leaders of the future. After 14 years, we are really very proud of our achievements. Right now, we offer 20 master degree programs. Our school is very international. Our MBA is ranked by Sport Business postgraduate ranking the best three, among the best three in Europe and among the best 10 in the world. And right now, many of our alumni are in some of the most prestigious sport organizations in the world. So it's been a long way, but at the same time, we are really very satisfied about the results we've been able to achieve.
Well, Emilio, the opportunity for students from Australia and around the world to learn directly from the world's biggest sporting institutions, really quite incredible. Can you tell us what makes the Master's Program in Sport through Real Madrid Graduate School so special?
Well, I think the fact that Real Madrid is deeply involved in our graduate school makes this academic project unique. More than 80 Real Madrid executives are part of the faculty. Each program has a top Real Madrid executive as co-director, so that gives an exclusive privilege for our students to learn directly from those who are running different departments here in the club. At the same time, there is an exclusive, our human resources department designed an exclusive internship program just for our students. For example, last year, in spite of the pandemic, more than 100 students from our school took part in this program. And in fact, now, here in the club, there are close to 30 employees who came through our graduate school. So we don't want to boast, of course, but Real Madrid is one of the most prestigious football clubs in the world. And this commitment to our graduate school gives our students we consider a unique experience. At the same time, of course, we offer top-notch teachers and professionals, great professionals of the sport industry. They work for very prestigious organizations and help us provide our students with fantastic experience because they enrich our students' experience. Because we consider that theory is important, very important, but learning and listening to those who have to withstand enormous pressure in the sport industry is highly recommended. Another aspect I think is very important to highlight is the international approach, international outlook of our school. That was one of our goals when we set up our graduate school 14 years ago, and now, 73% of our students are from abroad, and more than 50 nationalities, 50 countries are represented in our school every year. So within the diversity, taking into consideration that we live in a global and very competitive world, is essential. And there is something else that for us is pivotal, is that for us, our students are not just students, are human beings, and we feel that we have to help them grow. We consider that values are very, very important for our life, determine our life, that shape our personality. And Real Madrid has been so successful through our history. The club was founded in 1902. And the question is why we've been so successful for so many decades. Not necessarily because we have great players, because other sport organizations have had great players as well, but they haven't been so successful. So we think that the key point is that is the certain values that have been nurtured and handed down from generation to generation. And then we want to share with our students. We reflected about the values of our graduate school, and finally we choose 5: entrepreneurship, leadership, integrity, teamwork, and excellence. Entrepreneurship, a good example is our president. When he took over, he was able to transform the club into a cutting-edge organization. Now we are revamping our stadium. Our stadium is in a strategic place in the middle of the city, and it's going to be a key element for our future. It's going to be a turning point in the history of the club. It's a good example of entrepreneurship. I admire entrepreneurs because they have the courage to act out their dreams. So we always say we're students that, you have a dream, go for it. So I think that is really very important. Leadership. We aspire to become the best. Of course, that we try to learn from others, but at the same time, we strongly believe in ourselves. When we talk about leadership, it means teaching by example, working very hard, and stepping up when the situation is really tough. I mean, a leader is not afraid of facing tremendous, almost impossible challenges. A leader is able to get people together, is very demanding, is positive, and of course, we consider should be a key element for everybody. Integrity, we're talking about values. We say that we are shaped by certain values. One of these values has to be integrity. Nowadays, many companies hire people not just because of their knowledge, but because of their values. And in our view, integrity should be one of these values when you have to make decisions, when you have to face certain situations. Teamwork. Nowadays, it's impossible to achieve something alone. You need others to succeed. First of all, you have to strongly believe in yourself and be very loyal to your unique talent. This is really important because I think all of us, we are very good in something. Probably you have to discover it, but you are very good in something better than the rest. And that is going to be your trademark, let's say your turnkey to succeed in the future. But at the same time, you have to develop an ability to help others to become better. We always say here in the club that, you have to always put the team first. You have to channel your talent and your virtues for the good of the team. Here, there is a very strong, we use a very strong sentence. If the team wins, I win. So here in the club in Real Madrid, you have to be a very good team player. And excellence is the ultimate goal. It's almost impossible to achieve, of course, but it's our driving force, is the energy we use every day to think big and trying to face some challenges that are almost impossible for anybody. When we are very successful, we never rest on our laurels. I mean, one achievement is the starting point for the next achievement. So that's why Real Madrid was able, yes, to win 3 consecutive Champions League and 4 in 5 years. If it's no other team has been able to achieve except the great team of Alfredo Di Stefano in the 50s. So, of course, that on one hand, having great teachers and being able to learn from them is really very important. We are going to provide our students with great experiences, but at the same time, we think that these values are going to be really very important for the future.
Well, your trademark, Emilio, was scoring many, many goals, and your leadership off the field and in the boardroom now has also become globally renowned. Of course, with the NBA, the brand of Real Madrid is synonymous with your value of excellence, and the prestige of the club means that here many professional athletes across all other sports, not just football, are so interested in hearing from the practitioners within the club of Real Madrid, and they get an opportunity to go for 2 weeks on a field project trip to Madrid. Can you just finally tell us, please, what they could look forward to when they arrive in Madrid?
Well, first of all, I would like to highlight that we're delighted with our partnership with Torrens University. We started in 2015, and I think we've been able to reinforce our relationship in this time. I think we've provided great experience for the previous Torrens University students who came to Madrid. And regarding this year, of course, the students are going to defend their field project here in Madrid, and they are going to receive input from our professors and, well, highly graded professionals of the sport industry. At the same time, of course, we are going to design a tailor-made program to make the most out of their time here in Madrid. And of course, they are going to have the opportunity to join all the students of our graduate school for the White Week. White Week is a very special week, for probably one of the highlights of the school year. It's like a kind of congress that we organize exclusively for our students, of our partners, students. And we invite, top executives from the most prestigious sport organizations, FIFA, UEFA, NBA, and great athletes, current athletes and former athletes. For example, Zinedine Zidane was one of them. Marcelo, Luka Modric, David Beckham, Rafa Nadal, Fernando Alonso, and at the same time, the vice president of NBA for Africa, Middle East, and Europe, Deputy General Secretary of FIFA, Deputy General Secretary of UEFA, and of course, Real Madrid directors, among them our CEO. So it's a really very special week where, you have the opportunity to interact with all these top professionals, people who, have to face great responsibility. And of course, I think it's a privilege for all of us to learn from their experience and knowledge. We are here to help. I mean, we are going to team up, of course, with the students, Torrens University students. But what we always say is that they have to do their best. We think that every day is an opportunity to learn. So when they come here, in our view, they are going to have an incredible experience. Of course, that we are going to do our best to make this experience an unforgettable one. But at the same time, they have to do their best, to enjoy the experience, to learn every minute from everybody who is going to be close to them, because we consider that what we offer is something really very special. So, of course, that we are very excited about this opportunity. We are very excited about this partnership, and we are looking forward to welcoming you.
And we're excited about bringing a next generation of MBA students across to step foot in the Bernabeu. I hope to join them and to say hello in person. Emilio, thank you so much. You've been very generous with your time.
My pleasure. All the best.
And can you see if there's a spare seat? Because I want to come as well. Well, that blows the final whistle on tonight, and I'd like to thank everyone. Thank you very much, Lucy. Thank you, Caitlin. Thank you, Joel, and thank you to Michael. Thank you, Chief. Big round of applause for Claudia. You did a great job, Claudia, and all the very best with your new business initiative. Thank you, Fozzie.
Okay, no worries.
On behalf of all of us, that's where we will finish tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Well done, Timmy. Good job, buddy.